The stage is a place of wonder. It's where spotlights shine brightest, where crowds cheer loudest, and where dreams are brought to life. But there are moments when those dreams turn into nightmares, when the performance itself becomes someone's final act. What happens when the laughter, the applause, and the music are suddenly replaced by silence, shock, and heartbreak? These are the haunting stories of 30 famous people who lived for their art and died in the spotlight, their final moments unfolding in front of stunned fans, live cameras, and audiences who never imagined they were watching history's most tragic curtain calls. Christina Grimmie, a voice cut short. Christina Grimmie's journey began with simple YouTube uploads, just a girl in her bedroom, a microphone, and a voice that soared far beyond her years. Millions tuned in, falling in love with her raw talent and humble spirit. Her big break came on The Voice, where Christina's performances captivated both judges and audiences, solidifying her as one of the brightest young stars of her generation. By 2016, her career was taking off. Tours, recordings, and a loyal fan base that followed her every move. On June 10th, after performing in Orlando, she stayed behind to do what she loved most, meet her fans face to face. She signed autographs, shared hugs, and smiled. But in the middle of that joy, tragedy struck. A man approached and opened fire. Her brother, Mark, bravely tackled him, but the damage was done. Christina was rushed to the hospital, but her life could not be saved. At only 22, her voice was silenced. The world mourned a star who had barely begun to shine. Social media flooded with tributes, and fans across the globe held vigils. Christina Grimmie's death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a reminder of how fragile even the brightest lives can be. And as shocking as her end was, some tragedies came not from violence, but from the very stages performers stood on. Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter's last dive. Few entertainers lit up the world like Steve Irwin. With his khaki outfit, infectious enthusiasm, and fearless approach, he brought audiences closer to wildlife than ever before. The crocodile hunter wasn't just a TV personality. He was a global icon who made people fall in love with animals that most would run from. On September 4, 2006, Steve was filming a documentary called Ocean's Deadliest in the waters of the Great Barrier Reef. Accompanied by his crew, he swam near an enormous stingray, an animal not usually known for aggression. But in a split second, the ray whipped its tail upward, piercing Steve's chest. The barb struck his heart. His crew pulled him from the water and desperately performed CPR, but there was nothing they could do. Steve Irwin died at just 44, though cameras had been rolling. The footage was never released. Out of respect for his family, it remains locked away, unseen by the public. The news shook the world. Fans who had grown up watching his boundless energy couldn't imagine a world without him. Tributes poured in, not only from fans, but from conservationists who recognized the enormous impact he had left behind. And while Steve's stage was the wild, other performers met tragedy in places designed for laughter. Tommy Cooper. When comedy turned deadly, Tommy Cooper was one of Britain's most beloved comedians. Known for his clumsy magic tricks, bumbling humor, and his trademark red fez, he had mastered the art of making people laugh at chaos. On April 15, 1984, Tommy appeared on live television, entertaining a massive audience. Midway through his routine, he suddenly clutched his chest and fell backward. The crowd erupted with laughter, believing it was part of his act, another one of his comedic stumbles. But as seconds passed, it became clear this wasn't planned. Behind the scenes, medics scrambled, but Tommy had suffered a fatal heart attack. The cameras kept rolling, capturing what became one of the most haunting moments in television history. For millions, the moment laughter turned to horror was unforgettable. But for some, the risks weren't hidden in their bodies. They were built into the very stunts that defined their careers. Karl Wallenda, the fall of a legend. Karl Wallenda lived on the edge, literally. As the founder of the Flying Wallendas, he spent decades defying death, balancing on wires high above the ground without nets. Audiences gasped as he performed feats most couldn't imagine attempting, and his name became synonymous with courage. On March 22, 1978, at 73 years old, Carl was still performing high-wire stunts. That day, he attempted a walk between two towers of a hotel in San Juan, Puerto Rico. The winds were fierce, but Carl pressed forward, step by careful step. Then, disaster struck. In front of horrified onlookers, Carl lost his balance and fell. The crowd gasped, their awe replaced by shock. The man who had made a career of conquering the impossible was gone in an instant. His death wasn't just the end of a performer's career. It was the final act of a man who had truly lived life without a safety net. And while Carl risked his life by choice, others were robbed of theirs by circumstances far more unpredictable. Owen Hart, wrestling's darkest night. Wrestling thrives on drama, but nothing prepared fans for the tragedy that unfolded on May 23, 1999. Owen Hart, one of WWE's most beloved stars, was set to make a grand entrance at the Over the Edge pay-per-view event. The stunt involved Owen being lowered into the ring from the rafters. High above the crowd, disaster struck. The harness malfunctioned, and Owen plummeted 78 feet, crashing into the ring. The packed arena went silent. Millions watching at home struggled to understand what had just happened. The broadcast cut away, and though WWE never released the footage, those in attendance would never forget. Owen Hart was rushed to the hospital, but he didn't survive. His death left a scar on wrestling that remains to this day. A reminder that even scripted drama can sometimes become horrifyingly real. And Owen wasn't the only wrestling legend to meet his end in front of fans. Mitsuharu Misawa, silence in the ring. In Japan, Mitsuharu Misawa was a hero. A wrestler known for his skill, toughness, and legendary matches, he inspired generations. Fans filled arenas just to watch him perform. On June 13, 2009, in Hiroshima, Misawa was competing in a tag team match. The crowd roared as he entered the ring. But during the match, he took a suplex, a move he'd endured countless times before. This time, he didn't get up. The arena fell silent. Referees waved frantically. Medics stormed the ring and CPR was performed in front of thousands. Fans watched in stunned horror, some crying, some frozen in disbelief. Hours later, it was confirmed. Mitsuharu Misawa had died from a spinal cord injury. The wrestling world lost not just a star, but a legend whose final act was witnessed live by the fans who loved him most. And while wrestlers risked their bodies in the ring, musicians often faced dangers just as sudden and unexpected. Dimebag Darrell, violence in the spotlight. December 8, 2004, Columbus, Ohio. The band Damage Plan was in the middle of a set, their music loud, the crowd electric. At the center of it all was Dimebag Darrell, one of the most iconic guitarists in heavy metal history. Then, in a heartbeat, chaos. A man rushed the stage with a gun. Before anyone could react, shots rang out. Dimebag was struck multiple times and killed instantly. In the frenzy, 3 more people were murdered before the shooter was stopped. The metal community was devastated. Dimebag wasn't just a guitarist. He was a force of nature, a pioneer whose riffs had defined an era. Fans across the world mourned not just his death, but the violence that had stolen him from them. And while Dimebag's death was the result of an attack, others faced tragedy from the environment itself. Goodbye to Gravity. A concert in flames. October 30th, 2015. Bucharest, Romania. Inside the Collective nightclub, fans gathered for the metal band Goodbye to Gravity's album release concert. The energy was high, the music loud, the future bright for the young band. But then, pyrotechnics ignited the club's foam insulation. Within seconds, flames raced across the ceiling. Panic erupted as hundreds of fans tried to escape. The exits were few and blocked. When it was over, 64 people had died, including 4 members of the band. Dozens more were injured. The tragedy sent shockwaves across Romania, sparking massive protests against corruption and lax safety regulations. What should have been a celebration of music became one of the darkest nights in the country's history. And while some tragedies took many lives at once, others struck down singular stars in shocking fashion. Bruce Lee, the Dragon's Final Battle. Bruce Lee wasn't just an actor. He was a philosopher, a fighter, a revolutionary who changed martial arts forever. His films electrified audiences, his speed and skill unmatched, his charisma undeniable. But in 1973, while preparing for a film, Bruce complained of headaches. He was given a painkiller. Hours later, he collapsed. Doctors determined he had suffered cerebral edema, swelling of the brain. At just 32, Bruce Lee was gone. Though not on stage in the traditional sense, his death came in the middle of his craft, his body giving out while he was still performing, still working to inspire millions. The world mourned the dragon, a man who seemed invincible. But death, like performance, comes for everyone, even legends. And fate dealt an even crueler blow when his son's life ended in a hauntingly similar way. Brandon Lee, the Crow. In 1993, Brandon Lee, Bruce's only son, was starring in The Crow. A rising star, he had inherited not only his father's talent, but also his charisma. On March 31, during a scene where his character was shot, a prop gun malfunctioned. Instead of firing a harmless blank, a real bullet fragment, lodged in the barrel, was propelled into Brandon's body. He collapsed on set, bleeding heavily. Despite hours of surgery, he died. He was only 28. The tragedy shocked Hollywood. The parallels to his father's untimely death were chilling, almost too cruel to believe. Fans who had been ready to watch a new star rise were instead left mourning a life stolen by a freak accident. Pedro Henrique. A festival turned silent. Brazil's music scene had no shortage of talent, but Pedro Henrique stood out. His guitar work was electric, soulful, and filled with emotion. Known for both band projects and a successful solo career, he had become a favorite among fans across the country. On March 12, 2023, Pedro was performing in São Paulo, ending the stage as he always did. The festival crowd was buzzing, thousands swept up in his sound. Then, in the middle of his set, Pedro suddenly collapsed. At first, fans thought it was a dramatic flourish, part of the show, but when crew members rushed to his side, panic rippled through the audience. Despite being rushed to the hospital, Pedro was pronounced dead. A heart attack at just 39 years old left Brazil in mourning, his family and fans struggling to process how someone so full of life could vanish in a moment. And Pedro's wasn't the only performance to turn tragic in recent years. Valencia Prime, the dancing diva's last show. Valencia Prime was a rising star in Philadelphia's drag scene. Known as the plus-size dancing diva, she was vibrant, full of positivity, and beloved by the community. She hosted her own showcase, Prime Time, where she entertained crowds with humor, music, and boundless energy. But on September 12, 2022, tragedy struck. Midway through her performance at Taboo Lounge, Valencia collapsed. The audience froze, unsure if this was part of the act. But as medics rushed in, the gravity became clear. At just 25 years old, Valencia was gone. The medical examiner later revealed it was cardiovascular disease, a natural cause, but the shock to the LGBTQ+ community was immense. Tributes poured in, remembering her as a bright light extinguished far too soon. Colonel Bruce Hampton, a birthday farewell. Atlanta's Fox Theater was packed on May 17 for a star-studded birthday celebration. Musicians from across the jam band scene came together to honor Colonel Bruce Hampton, a pioneer of the genre, as he turned 70. The night was filled with joy, music, and reunion. Then, during a high-energy jam session, Hampton suddenly collapsed, resting his arm on a speaker as if in exhaustion. The crowd thought it was a staged moment after all, Hampton was known for playful theatrics, but as he remained motionless, concern turned to panic. He was rushed to the hospital, but he never recovered. In a bittersweet twist, his 70th birthday celebration became his final performance. Fans left with the eerie memory of celebrating a legend as he played his last notes on stage. Barbara Weldons, electrocuted on stage. Barbara Weldons was a French singer-songwriter on the cusp of international recognition. Her debut album had been praised by critics, and she was gaining a reputation for deeply emotional performances. During the Léo Ferré Festival in Gourdon, France, on July 19, 2017, Barbara performed barefoot as usual, a habit that made her feel more connected to the stage. But that night, faulty electrical wiring turned deadly. In the middle of her set, she collapsed as the current surged through her body. Efforts to revive her failed, and she was pronounced dead at just 35. Fans were stunned, unable to reconcile how someone so alive, so full of promise, could be taken by something as simple as a wire. Sib Hashian, a rock cruise turns dark. For fans of the rock band Boston, Sib Hashian's drumming was iconic. He played on some of their biggest hits, including More Than a Feeling, his beats pounding into the soundtrack of the 1970s and beyond. In March 2017, Sib was performing aboard a Legends of Rock cruise ship, a dream vacation for fans, with classic rock stars performing intimate shows at sea. Midway through his set, Sib suddenly collapsed behind the drum kit. Despite frantic attempts to revive him, Sib Hashian was gone at 67. His sudden passing hit especially hard for fans who had come to celebrate the music of their youth, only to witness one of its creators taken before their eyes. KK, Bollywood's beloved voice, Krishna Kumar Kunath, known simply as KK, was one of India's most beloved playback singers. His voice graced countless films, his songs etched into the hearts of millions. From soulful ballads to energetic anthems, KK's versatility made him a household name. On May 31, 2022, KK was performing in Kolkata at the Nazrul Mancha Auditorium. Fans filled the venue, thrilled to hear the voice behind so many Bollywood classics. But during the show, KK began to feel unwell. After the concert ended, he collapsed. Despite being rushed to a hospital, he was pronounced dead of cardiac arrest at 53. India's music industry was devastated. Politicians, actors, and fans alike mourned a singer whose voice had defined an era of film music. Zoltan, a shocking death on live TV. In 1981, Hungarian singer Zoltan was performing live on television, captivating his audience with charm and energy. But as the cameras rolled, he suddenly collapsed. The cause was a heart attack, shocking fans watching both at home and in the studio. His death became a topic of speculation in the press, with rumors and conspiracy theories swirling. Was it truly natural, or something darker? While the official cause was medical, whispers of foul play lingered for years. What is certain is that fans never forgot the image of a performer whose final moment was captured live. Kosta Tich, the rapper who collapsed twice. In Johannesburg on March 11, 2023, rapper and dancer Kosta Tich was in his element at the Ultra Music Festival. His set was filled with high-energy choreography and crowd interaction, his reputation for electrifying performances on full display. But mid-song, he collapsed. Gasps filled the arena, then relief as he got back up and continued rapping. Moments later, however, he collapsed again. This time, he did not rise. Despite medics' efforts, Kosta was pronounced dead at just 28. His death sparked speculation of seizures or exhaustion, but no definitive cause was ever released. For fans, it was a surreal moment, watching a young artist fall not once, but twice before their eyes. Papa Wemba. The king of Congolese music, Papa Wemba was a legend in African music, known for pioneering the soukous genre and influencing generations of artists. His career spanned decades, his music fusing traditional rhythms with modern styles, and he became an icon across the continent. On April 24, 2016, during a performance in Ivory Coast, Papa Wemba was dazzling the crowd with his timeless energy. Then, Suddenly, he collapsed. The music stopped. His bandmates rushed to his side, but there was nothing they could do. At 66, one of Africa's most influential musicians was gone. Fans across the continent mourned, holding vigils and tributes that celebrated not just his life, but the cultural legacy he left behind. Irma Bula, Dancing with Danger. Indonesian dangdut singer Irma Bula was known for her daring performances. She often used live snakes as props, thrilling audiences with the danger and spectacle. But on April 4, 2016, while performing in West Java, her cobra bit her on the thigh. Irma kept performing, insisting she was fine. She had been bitten before and survived, but this time, the venom was real. Minutes later, she collapsed on stage. Despite being rushed to the hospital, she died at just 29. Her death shocked Indonesia, raising questions about the risks entertainers take to stand out. For fans, it was almost impossible to believe. A young singer who had danced with danger one time too many. Juan Jumalan, a live broadcast, turned deadly. In the Philippines, Juan Jumalan, known affectionately as Johnny Walker, was a beloved radio broadcaster. His morning shows were filled with jokes, good vibes, and lighthearted entertainment. But on November 5, 2023, as he sat at his microphone broadcasting live, two men arrived at his studio. One held an assistant at gunpoint while the other entered the booth. Listeners could hear Jumalan greet them casually, still in on-air mode, before gunshots rang out. His program ended in chaos, streamed live on Facebook for shocked fans to witness. What had been a normal morning became one of the most horrifying moments in Philippine media. Dick Shawn. The joke that was. Dick Shawn was a comedian who thrived on unpredictability. Known for wild antics and sudden physical humor, he loved to catch audiences off guard. In 1987, during a college performance in San Diego, Shawn suddenly collapsed on stage. The crowd roared with laughter, assuming it was just another bit of his offbeat routine. Minutes passed before the truth became clear. Dick Shawn wasn't acting. He had suffered a fatal heart attack. The laughter gave way to stunned silence as medics rushed in. It was one of those chilling moments where comedy and tragedy became indistinguishable until it was too late. Lillian Hardin Armstrong, a jazz pioneer's final note. Lillian Hardin Armstrong was more than just Louis Armstrong's wife. She was a jazz pioneer in her own right. A pianist, composer, and bandleader, she helped shape the golden age of jazz. In August 1971, she was performing at a televised memorial concert in honor of Louis. As she sat at the piano, playing for her late husband, she suddenly collapsed. The audience gasped as the woman who had given so much to jazz was carried away. She died of a heart attack on the way to the hospital, her final note struck during a tribute to the man she had once loved. Tiny Tim. The falsetto fade. Tiny Tim was one of the most unique entertainers of the 1960s, famous for his falsetto voice and ukulele rendition of Tiptoe Through the Tulips. Quirky, eccentric, and unforgettable, he carved out a strange but enduring niche in pop culture. On November 30, 1996, while performing at a gala benefit in Minneapolis, Tiny Tim collapsed mid-song. He was rushed to the hospital, but was pronounced dead shortly after. His final performance was his literal last note, his quirky charm silenced in the middle of doing what he loved most. Red Fox, comedy's tragic punchline. Best known for his groundbreaking role on Sanford and Son, Red Fox was a comedy legend with razor-sharp timing. On October 11, 1991, while rehearsing for his sitcom The Royal Family, Fox suddenly collapsed on set. At first, castmates thought he was joking. After all, he was famous for comedic fake heart attacks. But this time it was real. Fox had suffered a massive cardiac arrest. He died later that day, his final moment blurring the line between comedy and tragedy in a way only he could. Don Brancho, the SeaWorld tragedy. Don Brancho was one of SeaWorld Orlando's most experienced trainers, especially with orcas. On February 24, 2010, during a routine show with the killer whale Tilikum, the unthinkable happened. The whale suddenly grabbed her, pulling her into the water in front of horrified spectators. Despite frantic rescue efforts, Dawn could not be saved. Her death sparked a worldwide debate about marine parks, animal captivity, and human risk. For many, it marked the end of an era in animal entertainment. Silver King, a wrestling icon's final match. In 2019, Silver King, a Mexican wrestling star and actor, was performing in London. Known for his flamboyant personality and strong in-ring presence, he was a crowd favorite. But during the match, Silver King collapsed. At first, fans thought it was part of the performance. Wrestling often blurs reality. But as minutes passed and medics rushed in, the truth was clear. He had died of a heart attack in the middle of the ring. The audience left in shock, struggling to separate performance from tragedy. Nick Menza, heavy metal silence. Nick Menza, former drummer of Megadeth, was a powerhouse behind the kit. His thunderous drumming helped define some of the band's most iconic albums. On May 21, 2016, he was performing with his band OHM in Los Angeles when he suddenly collapsed mid-song. Fans at first thought it was part of the act, but Nick never got back up. At just 51, his drumming stopped forever. Juan Carlos Formel, a Cuban bassist's last performance. Juan Carlos Formel came from a legendary Cuban music family, and his talent on the bass made him a respected figure in Latin jazz. On May 26, 2023, he was performing with Los Van Van in the Bronx, New York. Midway through the set, Formel collapsed. Fans watched in shock as medics rushed him away. He was later pronounced dead at 59. The cause, a heart attack. His bandmates finished the tour in mourning, carrying his legacy with them. Les Harvey, electrocuted on stage. Les Harvey, guitarist for the Scottish blues rock band Stone the Crows, was known for his raw playing style and passion. In 1972, during a live show in Wales, Harvey touched a microphone that had been improperly grounded. The audience watched in horror as he was electrocuted in front of them. At only 27 years old, his promising career was cut short in an instant. His death remains one of the most infamous examples of how technical errors can turn deadly under the lights. 30 stories, 30 lives, 30 performers who gave everything to their craft and paid the ultimate price in front of their fans. Some deaths were the result of accidents, faulty wires, collapsed bodies, unexpected falls. Others came through violence, shocking acts no one could predict. And some were simply the cruel timing of fate, striking down artists in the middle of doing what they loved most. Christina Grimmie's voice silenced at 22. Steve Irwin's boundless energy taken by a single stingray barb. Owen Hart's fall that froze an entire arena. Dimebag Darrell's riffs cut short by violence. Bruce and Brandon Lee, father and son, united by tragedy. For audiences, these moments blur memory and performance. Fans remember the joy, the laughter, the music, the spectacle, but also the silence that followed. The haunting realization that they had just witnessed someone's final act. In the end, the stage was not just where these performers lived, it was where their stories ended. Their legacies remain, their names etched into history, and their final moments serve as a reminder the spotlight can be both a gift and a curse. Because for these 30 stars, the show didn't just go on, the show ended with them.